Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
You use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Next Stop Everywhere, your one-stop shopping for all your Doctor Who discussions. I'm Jesse Jackson, and joining me today is my good friend Charles Skaggs. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Jesse. How are you?
I am awesome. Just so excited to talk Doctor Who again. It wasn't as long a break this time.
No, the breaks are getting shorter, and
Yes.
we just need to keep fine-tuning that just a little bit more,
Absolutely.
so we can get back on track. But unfortunately, life is one of those things that happens when you're making other plans. So,
Absolutely. And today we're going to talk about Remembrance of the Daleks, which was, according to my research, like the first episode of the 25th anniversary of the Doctor, right?
yes, it was. This story is pretty much regarded by old school Doctor Who fans like myself as essentially the 25th anniversary story. Now, there was the official 25th anniversary story, which was Silver Nemesis, which is 2 stories after this one, but it's not nearly as good as this story. It's a bit cheesy, but so most people consider this story because of the ground that it covers, of the mentions of the past, that they kind of consider this one the 25th anniversary story unofficially.
Very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
very cool. So, um, how do you rate the episode? I want to get you on
Ooh.
record before I share mine.
Oh, you want to give our ratings first, right off the bat?
No,
Oh.
just, kind of quick thoughts
Okay,
about it.
quick thoughts. Well, this episode was written by Ben Aronovich, who also wrote the episode Battlefield, which was from the following season, and directed by Andrew Morgan. Generally, I really enjoy this episode or this story because, again, there's so many allusions to Doctor Who's past, especially
Hmm.
since it's centered around the actual date of November 23rd, 1963, which was the day that Doctor Who first aired on television. And so it brings the 25th anniversary full circle. There's all kinds of mentions with you've got the Daleks, of course, you've got Davros, you've got the return of Coal Hill School after 25 years. So that's kind of a big deal. You've got mentions to previous Dalek episodes, um, and even an actually now in retrospect, it's actually foreshadows a future episode in The Caretaker, which we can
Uh, yeah,
cover later
okay.
on. But
Um, yeah, I know I did pick up on the blind priest friar, saying your
yes,
voice sounds different.
yeah.
I thought it was going to be an older man with long hair,
Hmm.
when he's picking up the thing. So I do notice that. I did not catch the reference about when he said, "I'm going to visit my past," and he goes to a little tea shop. And he mumbles something about, "Oh yeah, she's having the twins."
Hmm.
So I didn't catch that reference, but I could tell that it was something. Um, Charles, I really didn't like this episode.
Okay.
Um, and I find this is almost hard to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I found both Ace and this version of the Doctor
Right.
just not very intriguing
Really.
and not very.
Even with the Doctor being very Machiavellian and manipulative.
See, I just didn't catch that.
Yeah.
And maybe
That's
I
that. Well, this is actually the first real time we actually get to see that aspect of, because McCoy finally finds his doctor in this story
okay.
as a much more like chess playing figure.
Mhm.
Basically, like he sets up the pieces along the way. Like he's got an end game. He has an end game for the Daleks in this story that he
Right.
sets up, and so yeah,
Eh,
and he's not afraid to like use important people close to him,
mhm.
like Ace, as pawns toward his objective.
Yeah, I read all that,
Hmm.
after I watched the episode, and it felt to me just like a faded version of the show.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like him and Ace had any chemistry. I didn't feel like he was interesting as the Doctor at all.
Hmm.
Um, it felt almost tired. And I don't know if maybe, I've got baggage and I'm not enjoying the show, but I ended up seeing this like 2.5 times. I
Okay.
had to watch it a couple times to get
Hmm.
the idea. And this is by far the least favorite of the classic Who's
Hmm.
you shared with me. And
Okay.
and and I was really surprised because I'm going, wow, this is ranked, you know,
Yeah.
and won some polls a top 10 episode.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people really enjoy this episode. A lot of people rank either this story or the Curse of Fenric as their favorite Sylvester McCoy story, and the Seventh Doctor and Ace is actually pretty much regarded as one of the better Doctor companion relationships in the show's history.
Yeah, and I know you were really, and so that's why I thought it would be interesting to talk about,
Yeah.
is it that, and all of us, have different tastes and your mileage will
Yeah.
vary. So, but it was just interesting for me. Um, I thought the Hand of the Omega was a cool MacGuffin.
Yeah. Right.
I the maybe I just don't. Maybe the Doctor Who logo is so freaking weird that alone kind of took me off my path.
Well, I will grant you, because this is Doctor Who. Like, this was the penultimate season of Doctor Who.
Mhm,
Doctor Who ended with the 26th season, the following season. So, I mean, the show was definitely on a downward slide as far as ratings, and production values, because the BBC didn't want to kick in money for it
mhm,
anymore. They thought that they weren't as interested in science fiction shows because they weren't able to keep up
mhm.
effects wise compared to American shows. And so like it was much easier for them to just import those American shows than to bother spending money, which is public funds,
Yeah.
because of how it's structured over there in Britain. That that they would rather just go ahead and just import American shows rather than spend money on stuff that they thought that wasn't that important anyway. And you had a controller in ahead of the BBC that just loathed Doctor Who.
Mhm.
He was basically trying to essentially kill the show, and eventually he did.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, because it was like his name was Michael Grade, and with like Colin Baker's second season, that was put on hiatus for 18 months
Yes.
for retooling, and then finally the show came back with a much shorter season, and just with like trying to emphasize a little more humor, and it got very frustrating, and then like eventually Colin got sacked and replaced by Sylvester McCoy. So yeah, it was definitely, I can agree with you on this in the sense that there is that downward slide. Like it's not the star had kind of faded a little bit,
Yes.
but but I think this story and the Curse of Fenric are those last gasps of the show that once was.
And
So go ahead.
and I thought it just the Sylvester McCoy's Doctor did not seem as engaging
Hmm.
as some of the others. Um, when we've now gone through a fair amount of doctors, and even I talked about that your doctor, the fifth doctor, was a little bland, but
Hmm.
he was still engaging. And then I was really surprised with this, we talked about last time, Colin Baker, of how much I liked him as a doctor. Didn't think the story was as good as it could been, but I
Right.
thought him as a doctor. This one I really had no it was truly like this isn't I don't feel like this is the Doctor. I just feel
Okay.
like it's a very charming Sylvester McCoy, with his umbrella, and he took his hat
Yep.
off a lot. I did like that
Yes.
he took
Right.
his hat off a lot and used it a
Yep.
lot. But and Ace was interesting. I don't know if she was. I mean, I didn't find her irritating. She wasn't, the kid who dies, Adric.
Adric. Yeah.
Yeah, Adric.
Yeah.
Not that irritating. I just wasn't sure, and it might be just her silk jacket with all the patches and the
Yeah.
huge backpack. You're like, that just looks strange, dude. What are you doing?
Well,
Um,
this was the '80s.
yes, it was
You have to take that in consideration. That
absolutely
it's like fashion is not exactly a high point, but
yes.
at least it was better than the '70s. So,
Absolutely, and
but
so maybe that was it. But I it's always fun watching it because I know I'm going to talk to you about it. But
okay.
I think if I wasn't going to talk about it, I may have just said, "Nah, I don't need to watch this one," and moved on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. I mean,
Yes.
this is why we're approaching it from your perspective.
Yes. So
And
I'm
so
curious. Tell me, and Charles, represent
yes.
all of Doctor Whodom. Not
Uh,
like I'm going to put a full burden. Where is
no, not.
Sylvester ranked as the Doctor? How is his tenure ranked?
Um, I think Sylvester's kind of in the middle
Okay.
of the pack, basically. Um, he's not as less regarded as, say, Colin Baker. He's more well regarded than Colin Baker's Doctor. Um, and like a lot of fans and fan polls, like they kind of put John Pertwee and William Hartnell's Doctor at toward the bottom because they aren't as flashy as the other Doctors. So I'd say he's somewhere in the middle, depending on your point of view. He's
Okay.
not up there. He's not up there with, like, the Tom Baker or David Tennant by any
Yeah.
means, but and he definitely has his fans,
Hmm.
and he probably has more fans now that he was in the Hobbit movies.
Yeah, and he is
As
absolutely
Braddock has.
yeah, he's absolutely charming in
Right.
his convention and interviews, and he is, in the Five-ish Doctors,
Right.
he rules.
Yeah.
He's amazing. So I just was curious.
Well, his doctor is, I mean, well, as an actor, he was essentially like a very physical comedian
Mm-hmm.
in Britain and in the UK. That he was originally like wanting to, like he like would do a lot of stunts on stage or whatnot, and like he was very physical in his performance, and that kind of carries into his doctor with a lot
Hmm.
of like physical like gags
Yeah.
per se. Um, but like the whole bit in this episode where he's like, like he's like unconsciously or consciously stealing someone's pen, or
Yes.
yes, and things like that. Now Sylvester wanted to darken his doctor.
Okay.
He didn't want to be portrayed as light. He wanted to be a little bit more mysterious and enigmatic.
Okay.
So they kind of fit he kind of figured out that his doctor should be the manipulative doctor.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially his persona, the Seventh
Okay.
Doctor's persona. He's the manipulator.
Okay.
He's the chess player. He's the guy that who knows way more than he's telling. And you see a lot of that in glimpses of that in just about every Doctor. But this one,
Right.
Sylvester McCoy's Doctor in his final two seasons, pretty much exemplifies his Doctor. And so, like, in the following season, season 26, he dons like a brown coat. He gets rid of the light gray coat,
Hmm.
so he looks more darker and more serious in appearance. And so, his Doctor definitely evolves over the course of those three seasons. And at the same time he's doing that, he's also serving as a mentor to Ace,
Hmm.
who is essentially like, she's found in the previous episode Dragonfire, and like as his previous companion Melanie Bush leaves, Ace comes in. She's basically kind of like, she's a little punkish.
Yeah.
She's from the street. She was from this small place and that we visit later on called Perryvale, and it was a very like boring little small village, and she just kind of dreamed of going out and doing more. But she was also kind of a like anti-authority rebel,
Hmm.
and so he kind of takes this girl and kind of mentors her. And they have like she calls him professor instead of
Yes.
doctor.
I thought that was interesting.
That's her affectation for him.
Hmm.
Um, but they're very much like it is like a student teacher relationship where he kind of like broadens her horizons, and she kind of more matures as a woman. Like in the final season, she ditches the traditional, like her jacket that you hate so much, even though I think it was very cool.
Okay. All
But
right. Very cool.
because like I just love all the various patches. Like she's got the if anything, you should love her for the fact that she has the patch of the starship or the space shuttle Challenger on her jacket.
Very cool. And I read somewhere that
That's
she has a Batman earring.
Yep, and
That
she
someone
like,
said.
and,
That's cool.
they're basically like various pins or like patches that she picked up from various places or whatever, and they
Hmm.
made this jacket for her, but as her character. But
Maybe it's
like
the
just
backpack that bothers me, Charles, because it looks
well,
like she's wearing. I mean, it's this
yeah,
huge
yeah.
backpack. So,
Well, her whole other thing is that she's essentially a chemistry prodigy,
okay.
but with it, she's got a fondness for explosives. Okay, and like what she developed this like nitroglycerin knockoff she calls Nitro 9, and that's
Okay.
actually like she puts it in the canister she carries in her rucksack, and
Okay.
like the doctor would like he doesn't want her carrying them, but he knows in the back of his head that she's always carrying them anyway. So
Okay.
she's like, those explosives you're not carrying, I need those right now. So that's why he takes those canisters and blows
Okay.
up the Dalek with it.
Uh-huh.
So it's that kind of relationship where like she's that kind of that naughty,
Mhm.
naughty teenager, and he's the teacher that kind of like disapproves openly, but then you know like secretly like admires her, because if you remember, the doctor is essentially an anti-authority figure as well.
Yes.
He rebelled against the Time Lords on Gallifrey. He was the renegade who went off and ended up going into exile from Time Lord society. So he sees a lot of himself in Ace. So hope that gives you a little
It
better
does. That gives me a
grasp of
lot more information. I understand by reading that this is actually a pretty significant story that Russell T Davies thinks this is the start of the Time War, right?
right.
That
And yeah,
I mean, kind
yeah.
of retroactively, kind of, but in his mind,
hmm
um, the
I think it definitely influenced Russell T Davies.
yes, and well, he just had said that in his mind, this is the first start of the
Yeah.
war. I did like the two kinds of Daleks warring back and forth,
hmm
and the Doctor kind of, the, which devil do you choose?
Right.
Um, I think also hurting this one is its four segments,
Mhm.
and had the serial part. So at the beginning of each one, it shows you the few minutes of the previous one.
Yeah. Right.
So now I do know this is the famous. You will believe a Dalek can hover, and I
Yes.
just made up
Yeah.
that line.
Yeah.
You
No.
know,
Yeah. For a long time, there was the big joke in Doctor Who fandom that because the Daleks can't go upstairs. Like, how do
right?
you escape a Dalek? Just run upstairs
Yes,
because they can't go upstairs. Well, in this story, finally, that thing is put to rest.
yes,
Because at the end of the episode one cliffhanger, you know, you've got the Doctor who's like. Basically, he and Ace are down in the base in the cellar of the Coal Hill School, and like they're down there, and a Dalek attacks, and so like Ace, they start fleeing up the stairs. Ace gets out first, um, and the headmaster, who happens to be up there, shoves her out of the way, locks the door, being a real
hmm
dick, and
yeah.
locks the Doctor
I did
down in
like, hey,
down in this
wait.
yeah down in the cellar with a basement
hmm
or in the basement with the Dalek. And so, he's like, he turns around and then you see that Dalek coming up the stairs right at the camera facing you. And it's like, for the first time, I mean, this was a big deal for Doctor Who fans. And we didn't, it's, you know, like newer fans, the new Who fans, they obviously remember that like the bit in Dalek, the episode Dalek, the Christopher
hmm
Eccleston story, where the Dalek, like starts hovering, like elevate and
Yeah.
gets up, starts ascending the staircase,
hmm
to go after Rose. But so I'm sure that's Russell T Davies again being influenced by this story.
Oh, absolutely. Um,
So
yeah. There was. Now this wasn't unit the army in this, right?
no, no, this is essentially like a prototype, like pre-unit, thing that the show came up with. I mean, obviously Unit came first,
Yeah.
back in the 70s, but since this story is set in 1963, this is
hmm
before Unit. So they just basically came up with like, okay, we've got a military guy with, group captain Chunky Gilmore, although why he's called
Yeah.
Chunky, then no one knows. But
And we have a
he's essentially
scientific advisor,
he's
right?
yeah, like Gilmore is essentially the brigadier, and then
Yes.
you've got a scientific advisor in Rachel,
hmm
um, so that she's essentially serves like the doctor's role in
Yes.
this as the like the military scientific advisor who was drafted, as the doctor complained in the third Doctor area that he was drafted.
I like that part of it, and I would have liked this scene a little bit more of. They kind of accepted the doctor pretty quickly,
Yeah,
and that would have been a little interesting. Um, the um, and then Ace kind of had a little bit of relationship with Smith, right? The Smith character,
yeah,
that is his name.
yeah.
Yeah.
The character, yeah, Mike Smith, who we find out later is a like traitor.
Yes.
He's a Dalek agent,
Yes.
and
But he didn't know
Ace
it,
is.
Charles.
No, well, Ace is not happy about it though,
No.
and and she feels betrayed and hurt because she was crushing on him
Mm,
seriously hard right from
Yes.
the start, and he turns out to be like a toe rag, and
Yeah.
like so she's a little feels a little burned by that. So
Now she looks really good when she's out of her jacket and she lets her hair down. She's very cute. So any Ace fans out there, I
yeah,
am going to look at another episode. I am not talking bad about your companion. I just was they neither one were as magnetic, I think, as some of our modern
mhm,
doctors and our modern companions. So, and there are other, like obviously Sarah Jane, that's not
right,
fair to compare because she's
no,
amazing.
no,
But it isn't just that it's a classic episode, because there have been plenty of them in our discussion where I've said this is just a really good episode and it's
right.
really intrigued me. So, very, very cool. Very
Well,
interesting.
Well, you want to run down some things
Yes,
that through the
absolutely.
various
Please. And
story?
I, yeah,
Okay.
share, and then I will give you
Okay.
my, if I had any notes or thoughts on it.
Okay. We'll try and hit the highlights here,
Yes.
since we've covered a lot of ground already.
Yes, we have.
Um, Now, this story starts off as with an actual pre-credit sequence, which was like the first and only time that really happens in Doctor Who.
I liked
So,
the opening a lot. I loved the quotes. I loved you looking at the earth.
yep.
Very, very cool cold opening. I agree with that.
Yeah, because we get John F. Kennedy quote, like, some voiceover,
Hmm.
and of course, the thing with Kennedy, the whole association here with Kennedy is that November 22nd, 1963, when this story begins, is the actual day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. As you,
Absolutely.
as you being a proud Texan, know.
Yes. Not proud of that point, but are proud. And it was very odd this in the 50th anniversary year
Hmm.
that um, this was the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination in Dallas. So
Right,
there was so much history about that. And we got a lot of data here in Dallas and everywhere, really, but
right.
especially here in Dallas. And it was just interesting that the day after that horrible event, started one of the brightest and, most positive things that's happened in the past 50 years. Such a wonderful show filled with hope and life and it just seems, and my wife like, no, it isn't something significant. It just so happened. I'm like, no, there seems to be some kind of,
Hmm.
ironic is the wrong word, but there is
Yep,
something kind of fitting that they
a
started.
connection.
Yes, there is a connection.
Yeah, yeah, there is because this there's the Kennedy, like it's just one of those things, the Doctor Who debuted the day after the Kennedy assassination. So like
Yes.
I think for some people in Britain, I'm sure like, they were just horrified by the events and, like watching Doctor Who with their kids, like that may have been an escape for them, for some of them.
Yeah, I don't think there was a significant, and maybe you can, but after 9/11, I don't
Yeah.
think there was a significant. Now there's certainly a significant show that
Mhm.
started. Now, I certainly think 24 was influenced by
Yep.
9/11. The modern Battlestar Galactica certainly was
Yeah.
influenced by that, but not something that close and that significant. Yeah.
I think as far as like a September 11th, 2001 comparison, Smallville
Okay.
debuted like the week after that.
Hmm.
And so I think a lot of people, because they were like, you've got a hero in Superman, an
Yes.
American hero. He was occasionally very patriotic,
Mhm.
and the show was like, it's set in Smallville, Kansas, right in America's heartland. And so I honestly think, that show, the reason that it took off as quickly as it did wasn't because it was Superman. It's just, well, partly because it was Superman, but it was just that it was something hopeful and uplifting
Very
that
said.
America could
I can
latch
see
on to
that.
at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
very cool.
that's just my take on it, but
No, that's good.
that's I know that's our Smallville digression there for
Yes,
the
it is.
for the episode. Getting back to Doctor Who, like the Doctor and Ace, they arrive at Coal Hill School in Shoreditch, which is incredibly important to Doctor Who's history because it appeared last time it would appear before this story was in the very first story in An Earthly Child, which because this was the school that the Doctor's granddaughter, the first Doctor's granddaughter, Susan Foreman, played by Carol Ann Ford, attended with her teachers Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright, who become like the Doctor's first official companions after Susan, and the four of them, like they launched the series off, and it's lasted for over 51 years. So
Absolutely.
so Doctor Who owes that era a huge debt.
Mhm.
So it makes perfect sense to go back to it 25 years later, um, And they actually cover some of the various, like inside the school, you've got the science classroom where Ian taught chemistry and was, um, and there's a part in this story where Ace finds a book on the French Revolution, which was loaned to her by Barbara Wright, um, loaned to Susan. So there's that connection to the first story, and it's one of those cool things.
Yeah, I picked that up right away. And I try not to watch. I, I try to when I'm watching the episode not play the informational text, the
Right.
subtitles, till I've seen it at least once, so that I can kind of watch this fresh and take my notes. But I did write that note going like, okay, it's a school. Is this the same school? And then
Yeah.
when I saw it was, that's very cool. And they
Yeah.
go
This
back
is
to a junkyard, right?
right. Yeah. This is the same school that Clara teaches at.
Yes.
With Danny Pink until he died. But
Spoilers. Oh yes.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
spoilers. Yeah. But
Yes.
there's no spoilers. It's been months.
Yes, I know.
But as far as the junkyard goes, the doctor, once they hook up, Doctor and Ace, once they hook up with Mike and Rachel,
Hmm.
they take this, they hop into the van, and that's outside the school, and they head over to number 76 Totters Lane, a very important location, with the I.M. Foreman junkyard, which was also from an unearthly child, because this was where the TARDIS was basically hidden,
Hmm.
and like formed its, the police box took on that appearance through the chameleon circuit and got stuck
Yeah.
in the form of a police box. So this is we're not quite sure why the doctor in an unearthly child, like what he was doing there, apart from just he was hiding out
Hmm.
with Susan. But we're not quite sure why he chose a junkyard. Maybe he thought that, like it's less conspicuous, especially he could keep his TARDIS there, and he can keep to himself and nobody would bother him,
Hmm.
uh, him or Susan. So I'm not sure, like, because this is set the day before the TARDIS leaves.
Hmm.
So I'm not quite sure where the first Doctor and Susan are at this point in the story.
So
And,
I
and it,
yeah.
I'm figuring, like this must have been a weekend because the school was closed.
Right.
There wasn't anybody, students or anything.
Hmm.
But the question is, I just kind of wonder where the first Doctor and Susan were while all this was going on at the I.M. Foreman junkyard, right before they leave.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. On a side note, Charles,
Hmm.
um, it is it feels rare in the modern era where you don't have at least one scene inside the TARDIS. But it
Right.
feels like in Classic Who that happened a lot. Do you
Um,
have a feel one way or another?
uh, I mean, generally, it was, like you. It, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I wish.
It kind
I
of
know
depended on the
this
Doctor.
is I'm
Yeah,
sorry. This is a
I'm not trying to.
visual media, but if
Yeah.
you could see Charles's face, he's like thinking and he's scrunching his face and
Yeah.
he's trying to decide and go
Well,
ahead.
I'm just weighing all this stuff because like you've got all these different eras where, like, when it was Tom Baker's era, you got to see a lot of the TARDIS.
Right.
But while it was John Pertwee's era, because of the TARDIS being, like the Doctor not being allowed to travel in time because
Right.
of what the Time Lord's putting him in exile on Earth, that
You never
you,
saw it. You
you
never
never
saw the
never saw
inside.
the inside of the TARDIS, or if you did, you only saw it briefly.
Yes.
So yeah, there's things like that, and the last couple seasons on Doctor Who is when this is one of them that you really didn't see the TARDIS interiors much at all.
Okay.
If
And that might have been because they dismantled the set and they
Yeah,
couldn't afford to do a set again.
yeah, I think the last time we really see it is, I think, in Battlefield,
Okay.
which is the first story of the 26th season, and that's
Okay.
it, I
Okay.
think.
All right. Thank you for the answering. Continue on.
Okay, no
All right.
problem. No, that's why we're here. See, we're here to learn and to grow.
Yes, that is.
and to appreciate Ace for being awesome like she is.
Yes.
But um, let's see. All right. Now, one thing while they were at Coal Hill School, that kind of dickish headmaster that locked the Seventh Doctor in the cellar. Now, when the Doctor first shows up with Ace, the headmaster seems to think that the Doctor there is applying for the position of caretaker,
Yes.
which is, like now that we've had the 12th Doctor episode, the caretaker. I mean, it seems to me that it's a nice little foreshadowing, like unintentionally, of course,
Yes.
unless there was a time machine involved. That like here, this story that like there's already an illusion of the Doctor being the caretaker of Coal Hill School,
Yes.
which I think is was a very nice touch in the current or the season that we just had recently.
I think it was very cool, and it was interesting to hear him interact with, the kind of headmaster. That was very cool to see.
Yeah. So you like, if you're writing the fanfic, you're already thinking,
Yes.
oh well, the Doctor was inspired by this story to like take on the guise of the caretaker in
Yes,
in,
exactly.
in series 8.
Right.
So yeah, in 2014. Yeah, we talked about, the Dr. and Ace find the science classroom, but that Ian taught in the book in the French Revolution. Let's see. We talked about the Dalek climbing stairs and the headmaster locking them in. Okay. There was a really interesting discussion in the second episode of this where the Doctor goes to Harry's cafe.
Hmm.
And he sits down and he talks like it's evening after the first day, and he's kind of like a little worn out from the day of blowing up Daleks and whatnot, or getting shot at by Daleks. So he has like a nice cup of tea or whatever, and he talks to the guy behind the counter named John,
Yes.
and they have a really interesting exchange about the ripples of time.
Yeah, and so we have a very dear friend who shall remain nameless here in Dallas. That at times my lovely bride Linda will say, she just thinks too much. She's too deep. She's overthinking it. So
Best to get on with it.
a little bit of the Doctor this time.
Yeah.
Should I have sugar? Should I take sugar away forever? And then just like
well, the thing is, with him being like a black person in England, that he was saying that like if the sugar trade wasn't developed, then his grandfather wouldn't have been brought over as a slave for the sugar trade, and so he would have never been in England. He would be an African or something. And and the Doctor talks about like every decision has ripples that go on, and he gets, like you said, he gets really deep and introspective. And then John, in a perfect moment, just says, best just to get to on just to best to just get on with it already.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
just like very dismissive, just like like, dude, you're overthinking it, just get on with it already, and getting on with the story. So
It really was
I love that.
Linda. Yeah, it really was Linda telling her friend, okay, just let it go. So
Right.
that was cool.
So yeah, we get to the next morning, which is November 23rd, 1963, the day in big in Doctor Who's history. The Doctor goes to this funeral parlor, picks up the hand of Omega. Like he's opening the casket, and takes out the aluminum bat that he's got handy, Ace's aluminum bat, and charges it up. And so it's like super powered and can beat the crap out of Daleks with it, which is
So here's our pull out your bingo card.
Yeah.
Charles and Jesse making a comic book reference. I thought of Mage
right.
and with Edsel and her baseball bat.
Right.
So that was I liked the baseball bat thing a lot. I thought that
Yeah.
was very cool.
Yeah. It was a very cool weapon, and without being too threatening, and
Yes.
it works. But the Hand of Omega is a very interesting object. We haven't seen it before this episode, so like you said, it's a MacGuffin.
Hmm.
But it's a pretty good MacGuffin, and we get some background on because it's called the Hand of Omega, which is a reference to Omega, which is a Doctor Who villain, a big Doctor Who villain that first appeared in the Three Doctors, which was the 10th anniversary story, and then later appeared in Arc of Infinity, a Fifth Doctor story, and who at one point I kind of thought was going to be the big bad behind the whole business with the 11th Doctor and the silence and all that. Um, but a lot of people were thinking along those lines. It was a very popular rumor, but alas, it didn't happen, and it wasn't Omega. And old school fans were disappointed because he's kind of a cool. He's basically kind of like the anti-Monitor. Like he's from
Oh.
this. He's well, because he was originally a Time Lord.
Hmm.
Okay, and through his various experiments, he ends up like shunted into this antimatter universe.
Okay.
And his whole thing is he wants to get back into the normal universe, but he's a being of antimatter. And
Hmm.
so there's that whole drama of that's basically his supervillain background.
Hmm. Okay.
But before all that happened, he was a very major player in Time Lord society. He was like, he's up there with Rassilon and possibly the Doctor, because like this, he created this object, the Hand of Omega, which we find out later is a stellar manipulator that was used in time travel experiments that essentially formed the basis of Time Lord society.
Yeah.
So,
And so that was like you said, it's a good MacGuffin,
right,
and interesting. So it was a little unclear why he stored it on Earth.
right.
And why is it look like a casket?
Mhm.
you know,
Well,
but
it may have just been inside the casket. I don't think it
okay,
looked like a casket,
okay,
but like we didn't.
maybe.
It added to the mystery because you didn't know what it really looked like.
So maybe its chameleon circuit works, and it's just
Yeah,
looking like a casket.
yeah.
Okay.
What what kind of like what fans have pieced together is that for some reason the first Doctor, when he left Gallifrey, he took the Hand of Omega from Gallifrey and hid it on Earth because he didn't want it found for used for whatever reason. And so like when he and Susan, like hook up with Ian and Barbara and they head off, for the first time. I think like the Doctor forgot that oh yeah, by the way, the Hand of Omega is still on Earth.
Okay.
So, and being a time traveler, it's like, well, I'll just get around to it eventually because,
Yes.
it's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. I'll just pop back to 1963 and take care of it.
Absolutely.
And finally, in his seventh incarnation, six incarnations later, he finally gets around to it and goes back to Earth because he wants to use this thing as a way to take out the Daleks,
Absolutely.
as we find out. But yeah, but because through all that, yeah, we get the whole background on Omega, and the Doctor says a very interesting comment, about the Hand of Omega, or like the whole initial time travel experiments that form the basis of Time Lord society. He says, and I'm trying to quote here. He goes, "And didn't we have trouble with the prototype?"
Hmm.
So there's that little added mystery of the Doctor's background. Like, was he one of the founders of Time Lord Society with Omega and Rassilon? Was he one of the big head honchos? So
Mm.
we don't know. We don't know, and that's
No.
never really been explained. So
Yeah.
it's
we
just
we that's one of the things that in the modern era, right, they've kind of just not talked a lot about his past on Gallifrey
mm.
and kind of moved forward. Just he's out having adventures and doing things. So
Well, you don't want to take away too much of the Doctor's mystery. I mean, the show is
right.
called Doctor Who. So
Yes.
you want that mystery, and that was one of the things that Stephen Moffat, whether you love him or hate him, he was trying to do is bring back some of that mystery that he felt that had been lost.
Yes.
And so, like Russell T Davies kind of started that with the whole Time War thing, and then Stephen Moffat kind of jumped on adding his own little bit of mystery to the Doctor's background. He's still adding things like the whole business with the barn and, with the war doctor and all that.
Yes.
So he's adding his layers of mystery on top of that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, and Ace, while she's at this boarding house waiting, she gets left behind while the Doctor and Mike and everybody goes off, and she's not too happy about it. And while she's there, like, she turns on the TV, and then she finds this sign in the window that says "No coloreds." So, I mean, you have to keep in mind that this is 1963. As bad as racial problems are today, they were even way worse back then.
Absolutely.
So, there was definitely that kind of animosity, and Ace is completely disgusted by it. She goes outside. She's like, "I got to get some air. I got to get out of here before I
Mhm.
go off on this landlady." And so, as she goes out, though, the camera pans to the TV that she had turned on, and the BBC announcer saying, like, it's 45 minutes past the hour, and coming up next is a brand new science fiction series here on the BBC called Doctor Who, and then it
Yes.
cuts just right before the moment it becomes completely meta.
Right.
But I mean, there's enough of meta in there to make you go, I see what you did there. But
Yes.
but it was a nice little acknowledgement that, yeah, okay, they're on Earth on November 23rd, 1963. So it's a nice little shout out to the show's debut.
Yeah, and I read a little bit about that this was truly just meant as a one-off. You shouldn't read into that
Yeah.
Doctor Who is actually shown in the Doctor Who universe.
Right.
And, kind of so that was
Yeah.
I thought that was very cool.
It's just a cute little in joke. That's all it is.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like, don't overthink it.
Yes.
But you talked about the warring factions of the Daleks, because we had up till now, like the past few Dalek stories until this one, you kind of introduced that idea of warring Dalek factions, the quote unquote true Daleks, and then you had the renegade Daleks, which is why Ace talks about later about Dalek racial hatred, which brings the whole business with the no colored sign into perspective, because like there's those like racial overtones as far as the story goes. There's it's
Yes.
the Daleks being a metaphor for racial hatred against themselves.
Yes, and it was very, the two different colors of the Daleks helps reinforce that.
Right.
It was very much, I think, a strong metaphor for what they're doing. I agree.
So I'm going to ask you, as I hold this up to the camera, is this Dalek
Yes.
white and gold, or is it blue and black?
So if someone finds this 3 years from now and is like, what is Charles meaning?
Yes.
Yes. Very nice.
Yep. But well, the Daleks kind of have a skirt thing going, so
Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
so it's close to a dress. But anyway,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's an obscure reference that hopefully 6 months from now we'll have no idea what that was talking about, what we were talking about at the time. So
But very cool.
the let's see, the when okay, the Doctor builds this device while he's over like at whatever military headquarters they were at. And he builds this device, and he says, it makes a reference that it was similar to one he developed on the planet Spiridon. Now, Spiridon is actually a reference to a previous Doctor Who Dalek story called Planet of the Daleks. And that was from the show's 10th season in 1973. So that was a nice little nod to a previous Doctor Who story. So
Okay.
take that for what you will. So if you want to find out what the deal is with Spiridon, go check out that story. It's a pretty good one.
All right. Very cool.
And I know you like John Pertwee's Doctor, so
I do.
You
I
might-
like him a lot.
yeah, you might dig that.
Okay.
Let's see. All right. Let's see. Well, there's that creepy girl. The creepy little girl that's skipping around through the whole episode. And
Yes, that
yeah,
was
yeah, she's all squinty and like giving you evil looks at everything.
the only thing she didn't say is, are you my mommy?
Yeah.
Are you my mommy?
Yeah, she just needed a gas mask, I guess. But
Exactly.
um, one of the things I thought was funny was that when the doctor is, and this is like kind of like the beginning of the fourth episode now, that the doctor, he's going like sliding along a roof or along a rope from the school, the science room into the Dalek shuttle. Okay, and he goes in there
Yeah.
and there's a Dalek waiting for him. So
Hmm.
he takes out the Dalek with Christmas lights.
Yes, he does. They are Christmas lights.
And you can just
They're
it's just one of those
really fun.
total low budget Doctor Who things that only old school fans will appreciate.
Yes.
But yeah, if you want to see a Dalek getting taken out with Christmas lights, that's it.
There we go. There. This is your episode.
Yep.
The only thing I think, because he didn't use his umbrella, right, to
Right.
slide down the rope.
No, he wouldn't have
Okay.
supported his weight probably, but
Right.
maybe it would have. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, he just he slid down.
Yeah.
The let's see. Oh, when the Imperial Daleks and the Renegade Daleks fight, we are introduced to a brand new type of Dalek, the Special Weapons Dalek, which is the most badass Dalek ever made. Even for 1988, when this story was made, it still looked pretty damn cool. It's basically like a tank version of a Dalek, and it just blows the crap out of stuff. And
Yes.
and you know, old school fans have been begging for the return of the Special Weapons Dalek for years and decades. It finally returned in an episode called Asylum of the Daleks.
Right.
You remember it was one of those Daleks that was like lurking around on that Dalek asylum, and so we got a glimpse of it, but we didn't get to see it blow up stuff, and that was so disappointing.
So we need to beg Stephen Moffat, right, to give us this.
I don't know. What did you think? What did you think of Special Weapons? Do you think it was kind of
I-
cool?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought it was neat. It
Certainly
you
more
know once
certainly more intimidating than regular Daleks, I would think.
yes, it was. You know the I don't have the magic of the Daleks or the Cybermen that I think a lot of old school people do, because they've been there so often.
Right.
But yeah, it was cool. It was very cool. I love the Doctor's interaction with all the different Daleks, and especially when the Doctor kind of mimics them and
Yeah.
kind of does his
Yes.
impression.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun.
Yeah. The while we're on that subject, there were when the Doctor's like confronting the Daleks, like he rewires the transmat and turns into a transmitter, so he can contact the Dalek mothership that's up in orbit. And he's like, he's throwing down the gauntlet. He's like, I'm calling on, like, I'm the president-elect of Gallifrey, which is true. He was president. Well, he became actually he did become president, so he wasn't really the
Right.
president-elect. But so yeah, he's the like a president of Gallifrey, and I'm calling upon you to like surrender the Hand of Omega. Even though he wants them to have the Hand of Omega. Remember, this is the
Right.
Doctor playing chess, and like
Absolutely.
I want you to go back to Dalek space or the parallel dimension wherever he came from. If you're a Ghostbusters fan, but he and he's just really playing it up, and he um and then like the Emperor Dalek like comes out, and like the lid opens, and ta-da, who's the actual like Emperor Dalek? It's Davros, the creator of the Daleks. Dun dun dun.
Yes.
So this is actually the last time we get to see Davros in the original series. We don't get to see him again until the Stolen Earth in 2009, I believe.
Very cool.
So, or 2008, somewhere in there. I think it's 2008. But yeah, we don't get to see him for a long time. So this is kind of like his swan song from the original series. He was played by Terry Molloy in this episode, and he's generally regarded as the favorite of the classic Davros actors.
Okay, very nice.
Whether you think he's the best Davros ever, that's open to debate. But at the time, like he was the guy, and he's still being used for like Big Finish audios whenever they want to use Davros. So
Oh, that's kind of cool.
yeah, because you've had like there's a great audio called Davros, which has the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker's Doctor, going up against Davros, and on audio it's a great battle of wills in that episode. So
Okay,
highly recommend
nice.
it if you're a big Fanish audio adventure
Okay.
fan. But go ahead.
No, as we produce on the air.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I've never done a Big Finish audio episode.
But maybe we should do that
So,
one time. Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Maybe we should do that and then have a discussion.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Yeah. As we produce on the air.
Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you want to do about a month from now? No.
Exactly.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's good though. We definitely should. If you want, I can I'll come up with a list. How's that? And
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Let you choose one that you think sounds interesting or something.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Let's see. Really quick, because I know we're running a little long on time.
Yes.
We're wrapping up the episode, wrapping up the story. The Doctor begs Davros not to use the Hand of Omega. Don't do it. So of course Davros deploys it.
Don't throw me in the mud in the briar patch, briar rabbit, right?
He gets him all worked up. He starts ranting and he's monologuing and blah blah blah, and like he gets him all worked. So he's like, okay, fine, screw you. I'm deploying the Hand of Omega, but instead of destroying Earth or whatever, it destroys Scaro's sun by turning it supernova, and that ends up destroying Scaro, the home planet of the Daleks, in the process. But even though Scaro shows up later, so we don't know what happened, that it came back.
It got better.
It got better, apparently. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe something happened during the Time War and Scaro was saved, although it ended up getting destroyed in the Time War, or was something that it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's all timey-wimey.
Exactly.
Like Davros right before the Hand is gonna destroy the mothership. He's like, "See you later, guys. Bye-bye."
Right.
And like, feet don't fail me now, or wheels don't fail me now, and heads out and gets into escape pod, and he's like, "I'll be back." See you later. It'll be like 20 years later, but I'll be back. And it destroys the mothership, and then the Hand of Omega returns to Gallifrey, never to be seen in Doctor Who lore again, apparently.
Right.
Sadly, because it'd be a pretty cool Time War device, but maybe maybe someday.
And we get the ending where the Doctor's all philosophical, right? Like only time will tell.
Yeah.
Where he actually seems a little not sure on what he did, which I did recognize that that is a very much a Doctor trait, right? That sometimes he has to do what he has to do, but then is not always happy about having to do it.
Right. And Ace even asks him flat out. She's like, we did good, didn't we? And that's when he's like, yeah, it's like, perhaps. So
right, absolutely.
So we'll see. But so that was pretty much the episode. I gather you didn't like it. So
no. So let's go through our ratings. So I'll start. I'm gonna do 5 magical baseball bats.
Okay.
So yes, this is not one. And I guess maybe if I was rewatching all of McCoy's episodes, I may have to watch it and see it again. But this one, I was not impressed with him or Ace, though I acknowledge he's a badass. This has been the least favorite of my rewatches.
Okay, fair enough. I gave this episode 8.5 out of 10 special weapons Daleks that are totally badass.
Very cool.
That's what I gave it.
So, how about your quote? Do you have a quote?
I've got several quotes.
Okay.
If you want to go ahead and you can lay some quotes.
So I did smile when Ace says, looks at the doctor, the professor. She said and says, "I aim for the
Yeah.
eyepiece." When she just
Yep.
blows the thing
Yep.
to smithereens, I just loved her look at him like,
Yep.
I aim for the eyepiece. I just thought that was a really fun
Yeah.
line.
See, Ace loves blowing stuff up. So, like,
Yes,
you give her an anti-tank rocket, she's happy girl. That's what, and
yes, it's
that's what I love about her.
a simple woman.
Yep. Uh,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I've got a few quotes here. I've got okay, like we talked about with the whole rant with Davros,
Yeah.
or he's like, uh, you know, the Daleks shall become the lords of time. We shall come all, and then the Doctor jumps in. He's like, all powerful, crush the lesser races, conquer the galaxy, unimaginable power, unlimited rice pudding, etc., etc.
Yes, that was a great scene. I give that.
That's a great.
That was fun.
uh,
That is just so
That is
wonderful.
such a great Seventh Doctor moment. I love that. And
Yes.
then earlier in the episode, we were talking about the cafe. We're talking with John about
Hmm.
decisions causing ripples. He goes, "See,
Yeah.
see, every great decision creates ripples, like a huge boulder dropped in a lake. The ripples merge, rebound off the banks in unforeseeable ways. The heavier the decision, the larger the waves, the more uncertain the consequences." And then John, of course, is like, "Life's like that. Best thing is to just to get on with it."
Yeah.
So,
I did like the when he tells the doctor tells Ace, it's not your past. You haven't been born yet.
yep.
So I thought that was a pretty good
And then
sign.
Rachel's like,
Um.
what did you mean?
Yeah.
Like, haven't been
Yes.
born yet? And
Yes. And she kind of
Ace gives her the knowing smile, like,
yeah, like, oh
ha, ha,
yes.
ha, wouldn't you like to
Mm,
know?
exactly. Um. So I went pretty simple on my reverse the polarity. I thought about the wonderful the Where's My Mummy
Yeah,
episode,
yeah,
the two-parter
right.
with the creepy kid, but I ended up just going with the Dalek,
Yeah.
season 1 episode 6. I think this was the this was the last time you saw the Daleks.
Hmm.
You brought it back. I think there was a lot of pressure for among old Doctor classic fans to say, are we going to see the Dalek? A lot of pressure on how you bring it back and how do you make it relevant. And I was not, I had never seen any Doctor Who before. So I'm going through my DVD sets and I understood their relationship. And I think Eccleston did a great job of showing his fear, his hate, his,
Hmm.
the prejudice he has, and the great line of Rose saying, well, they're not the one pointing a gun,
Hmm.
at something. And so I think, if you're I think that is just a really good way to come back, and it might be a really good, double header, right? The
Oh yeah,
last episode of the Dalek, and then see where they're coming back
yep,
would be a fun one.
yeah. I think Dalek was the modern Doctor Who's first real classic story.
Yes,
Because it was just it was a home run hit right out of the park, and
yes,
very simple because you had just one Dalek being threatening. So just imagine what a whole bunch of them would be.
yes.
So, yeah, it was a great return for the Daleks, um, and obviously, there's been some hit and miss Dalek episodes here and there, but Dalek, the first one of the new series, is still one of my favorites.
I want to talk to us. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about what we're going to do next time,
Hmm.
but you and I have not got to talk about the passing of the late great Leonard Nimoy, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of throwing a curve on you.
Yep.
We did not talk about this before, but your podcast partner and I, Karen
Right.
and Lou, our friend who doesn't like the Doctor, and I did a
Heathen.
special episode talking about Leonard Nimoy's passing. And but I wanted to give a few thoughts of it's been now about a week. What are you? I know we're both mourning, but you want to take a few minutes to talk about what the man and his life meant to you, or are you going to cry?
No, I'm not
And
gonna.
do we need to ask this edit
No,
this out?
no crying for me. That's no crying. No, just
Yeah.
stop it. Leonard Nimoy was. He's obviously a huge influence in science fiction. Spock is obviously one of the all-time great science fiction characters ever.
Yes.
And thankfully, we've got someone like Zachary Quinto able to carry on the role without trying to like replace him. Like he's made the role his own. He's not trying to be Nimoy, and he's become friends with Nimoy in real life, or at least
Yeah.
before sadly Nimoy died. So it's kind of a testament to that. He's able to carry on with the character, but and still honor Leonard and what role he had. Um, I also remember Leonard or Nimoy from like other stuff. I mean, like he was in the original Mission Impossible
I was
as
going to bring
Paris.
that
As
up. He was
Paris,
very
yeah,
cool
he
with
was
that. Yes.
very cool on that show. There's the television show In Search Of, which as a
Yes.
kid I watched avidly because it was just like it was one of those like it was essentially like the what the Discovery Channel and Science Channel or whatever of today. Like they throw all these kinds of like like what's up with Bigfoot and what's up with all these mysteries of the pyramids and what's up with all
Mhm.
this. And so it was a very cool like because at the 70s you didn't really get too much of that talking about this kind of mythological or like legendary type things. So it was a very cool series. And then of course on the television series Fringe, one of my favorites,
Yes.
where he played William Bell, Dr. William Bell. And it was a great like that was essentially in my mind that was his last great role.
Yeah.
Even
And
though he
I
did
think,
Spock after that, it's
right.
just like as far as a new character, this was his last
Yeah.
great new character.
And it was almost like a curtain call,
Right.
that you could come in and I, like you, huge Fringe fan, loved the show, and he was so powerful in it and added, it was almost, science fiction royalty added to the show,
Mhm.
and not just in a way that's a cameo or something. He contributed. He was important. He added a lot of just grace and mystery to the show. So, absolutely, you know, he is and has been someone that I've always admired and loved, and in a lot of ways, the heart of the show, Star Trek,
Mhm.
and always seemed to, um, I think, like all of us, struggles with them. And I am not Spock to then become
Yeah.
I am Spock in his books.
Mhm.
Good friend Tom Zoller of the show talked about reading those books and the poetries and how much that meant to him. So would have, and I think your point about Zachary is in the spirit of the Doctor, right?
Yeah.
That an actor takes on this new
Right.
role and makes it his own. And so I think we're very pleased with that and happy. So just a little digression that both of us are, he was important to us.
Yep.
So
And
turning on to fun
I'm
things.
just glad that we
Yeah.
didn't lose Harrison Ford in that plane
Yes.
accident because
Boy.
can you imagine if we had lost Leonard Nimoy and Harrison Ford in the same week?
I mean, talk about the
Ah,
worst week
that
ever,
would
right?
that would have been like that would
Yes.
have been like, just a huge
Yeah,
geek geek catastrophe, a geek catastrophe.
absolutely. All right. So next episode, we are talking about the Eighth Doctor,
Mhm.
the infamous or famous, legendary Fox movie.
Yep, from
Uh,
1996, starring Paul McGann.
yes.
And
Right.
thankfully, this wasn't the last time we got to see him. So, for
Yes. I actually, to give a little back. Well, no, I'm going to save it for the next
yep.
episode. So yeah, so look for your feed. We're going to be about that shortly.
Hmm.
Charles, where do they find you?
I'm all over the internets. All of them over the webs. You can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter. And then I'm on the Instagram, the Facebook, the Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus, and my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot.
And I cannot recommend enough going to Charles's blog. It is always, he keeps you on top of news, great reviews. Really enjoyed your Powers
Yeah,
review.
I just posted that today. I'm glad you.
Yeah,
Wish
big
I
fan of the
liked
comic.
the show better, but
Yeah, well, you are not alone in your
assessment.
assessment of it, and it's made me not, because I was trying to figure out how to see it, and now that I'm kind of
Yep.
maybe I'll kind of move something else. I am at JWJ170104 on Twitter. Our Twitter feed is at NextStopSMG and NextStopEverywhereSMG@gmail.com. Please email us, send us your thoughts, ask us what you'd like us to do on our next round. I know that I wouldn't mind doing some comic book reviews and talking about classic Who, or maybe the new Who stuff.
Yep.
I think the audio would be good, and then we'll go around the different things. In the meantime, I'm going to say keep hope alive, and I want everyone to remember you must travel with understanding as well as hope.
Very nice.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.